25 years you've been here? And if so,
Yes,
how?
I feel they really have changed. When I first started here, it was very difficult to get them to talk in class. I had the feeling, and I don't know if this is true or not, that they had gone to private Catholic schools where discussion was not encouraged, and I have no idea if that was true or not, but I have always wanted a lot of discussion in my classes, and it was like pulling teeth when I first started here. That's not the case anymore. Students' learning styles have changed, and they are much more, they learn better by being more engaged in the learning process. And of course, you know, that's something that we here at the university have really encouraged, and I think it's worked well. The experiences that students have had as they've been growing up have been much more interactive than used to be the case with past students. So their brains have changed, how they learn have changed, and the way that they like to learn now, or the way that they seem to learn best, is very consistent with how I like to teach. So it makes me very happy. I really like a very active, engaged classroom. So I'm thrilled with those changes. Now, instead of trying to feeling like it's pulling teeth to get them to talk, now I can't shut them up. Which is wonderful, of course. And I don't know how much of this is the change in students that we've talked about, how much of it is that I have learned more the kinds of questions to ask to get them to participate, because that's certainly an important ingredient. I've also seen, in the time that I've been here, I think students become much more interested in the doing of research. Now, you know, we really try to encourage that with the Standards Symposium, all kinds of opportunities that we provide for students to do research. In my department, we have a 5-year BA/MA program. So students start taking graduate courses in their junior year. It's a wonderful program. It was the idea of our Director of Graduate Studies, Danny Robinson, but I'm kind of the key recruiter for it because I teach our theories class at the sophomore level, and that is the best place to find them. Anybody who can handle theories has potential for grad school. So I kind of recruit them from there, and then am able to mentor them for another full 3 years, and to work with them starting at the beginning of their junior year at developing research ideas. And I found that, gosh, given the opportunity, these kids can come up with some great ideas. They always require a little bit of working with, but didn't we all in those early days, to learn how to take something that you're interested in, turn it into a research idea, and then focus it down more, etc. I feel much more freedom here than I did when I was teaching at public universities. And of course, you know, in the past it would have been the opposite. One might think that at a church-affiliated institution that you would have less freedom, but as public institutions have changed over the last 32 to 40 years, you have much less freedom about the things that you can talk about there. I can talk, when I'm, for instance, talking about an elaboration likelihood model of persuasion, I can talk about my conversion to Christianity as an exemplar of that. I probably couldn't do that if I was teaching at a public university there. So I can talk about really pretty much anything I want. Well, there are probably some exceptions, but there are probably things that I wouldn't talk about anyway. Although knowing me, maybe that's not true. Maybe I've just learned over the years not to bring up some of those things. So I think that's one of the things that makes the University of Dayton really unique, is the freedom that we have here. The openness of the climate. It's such a cliche to talk about our sense of community, but it's so true. I was particularly struck by this a number of years ago. I don't even remember how many years ago it would have been, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I participated in our Leadership UD program, which is a wonderful program. I went into it reluctantly, telling my associate dean at that time, no, you know, I don't want to be a department chair. And she said, oh, there are many ways to lead. So she convinced me to do that, and it was a fantastic experience. But for me, the best part was going on a tour of the student neighborhood. And of course, I'd known about the student neighborhood for all the years that I'd been here, but I never spent that much time in it. And I was really struck that day by how the students construct, create, through their communication, the climate, the culture that is the student neighborhood. My role is to try to present the material in a way that will excite them about it, that will enable them to see how they can apply the material. And of course, with teaching communication, that's much easier than if I were teaching something in the math and sciences, where you have to really work hard to show them how they can apply that. With communication, it's much easier there. So I see that as my primary role, and their role to engage with me in that process, of course, you know, to do the readings, to turn work in on time, and to check their email. I give them this lecture about checking email as a professional responsibility, because you're on Facebook every day. You can just check your email too. So one of my pet peeves. But really focus on that interactivity in the engagement process, getting both of us engaged together. In the early days, I did a lot more exercises with students. I was teaching interpersonal communication, and of course, it's very easy to develop exercises to make those clear. Same thing with small group communication, conflict, etc. Now I spend more time teaching theories, research, etc. So I focus on engagement more by the kinds of assignments that I give them and the questions that I ask them. You know, I don't ask them, so what did such and such an author say about da-da-da-da? That's when they're going to continue to stare at me. I say, okay, so we know that author X said this, so if we take that idea, and if we're trying to develop a health campaign to get students to stop smoking, what could we do to motivate them to centrally rather than peripherally process this message? How could we show them the personal relevance of that? So think back to when you were in high school. What kinds of things could have shown you the personal relevance? So trying to get them to build on their experiences. So even my large class, I typically teach one class every semester with about 100 students. And when we first went to that larger format, I was really worried about getting students to talk there. So the very first time that I taught in that format, you know, in a large lecture hall, I took one entire day where we just talked. Where we talked about their, you know, what they had done this summer, what was the most interesting thing that they had ever done, places that they had traveled, silly stories about things that they had done at one point, just talking to kind of loosen them up. Well, I found after the years that that's not really necessary. They're loose enough anyway. And there's such a grapevine among the students that they probably know that when they come into my class that they're going to be talking. Their other students tell them, so perhaps that has something to do with it. So I guess the key that I focus on are the kinds of questions that I ask. I have one colleague who asks me frequently, same question, you know, maybe once every a few weeks. Oh, my evaluations are so low. How do I get students to like me more? It's not about getting students to like you more. It's about getting them engaged in the learning process. Well, I ask them, do you have any questions? well, that's not going to work. At that point, they're just in a rush to get out of the classroom. By the time you say, do you have any questions? He says, well, then I ask them, what did the reading say today? That's not an interesting question for them. You have to get them to talk about how this relates to past work experiences that they've had, to past relationships that they've had. So I'm still working with him.